Hello, Devlin Bishop here with you, and welcome to another edition of the Devlin Pirate Radio Show. Don't know why I sang it. I just come on here and just do what I feel. And apparently, singing was what I felt. Anyhow, we're here with you, and thank you for turning us on. And hopefully I turn you on with my great dialogue, and boy, this isn't starting well. But what you get is what you see, because we don't turn this machine off. We just keep going. And I'm okay. I'm okay to look the fool every once in a while. I think that's a saying. Anyhow, I'm back. And as you know, I've kind of been doing these willy-nilly lately. I took a break, and then I did one, and I had a fairly good response to it. Now, I know taking a bit of a break, I'm going to have to work hard to get my audience of 17 back. But I don't know, people shared it on their page, people commented on it, people wanted to, it was kind of cool. And, yeah, I didn't let it go to my head because I waited a couple weeks before I did another one. But I don't know if I should share this right now. I don't know if I should share this. I'm going to share this. I'm going to do it. Because I feel if I do it, then I have to commit to it because I'm that kind of guy. This is actually the return of Devlin's Pirate Radio Show, weekly. Yes, the show nobody asked for is back. And I'm going to do this regular. And as I said, I'll work hard to get my 17 people back. And hopefully I'll get a couple more along the way. Or, 17 new people. I'll take them all. Super Jen, let me know if you're still listening. Super fan Jen, not Super Jen, but she probably liked Super Jen. Anyhow, yeah, I'm going to start doing these weekly again. This, again, is a crazy time in my life to be doing it. Not crazy as in I've been in a bad place, but crazy because I've been actually working on my final monologue show. Devlin's Christmas Monologues is coming out in a few weeks. And I talk about it like my final one because I'm promoting it that way. But, I tell people if I show up 5 years later and pull a Cher or The Who, forgive me, because that's what I do. Anyhow, I want to start the show talking a little bit about that show, not promoting it necessarily. I think I've got another show I can talk to you about. That. And promoting it on a podcast is kind of weird because I find, you'd have to listen to it right before the show because many people probably listen to this weeks afterwards, and then I don't want to get them all excited. But I wanted to talk to you what it's like coming back to the stage. Now, I have done the Valentine's Day show, and I've done a couple of little shows here and there, but this is my first monologue show. Some of you remember I actually started this podcast when I was supposed to do a monologue show. And the reason why is because I had kind of a mental breakdown, and I had to put the show on hold. And it never came back. I just never really 100% recovered from the mental breakdown. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I don't want to get too dark and deep. Well, not till later at least, but I don't want to talk about that right now. But anyhow, in last year, I got a chance to do a wonderful show. I believe I talked about it on the thing called 6 Minute Memoirs, and it convinced me to do a show. And I booked the show way back at the beginning of the year, and now we're getting closer to it. When I did my first run-through, normally I do my first run-throughs like a week beforehand, and the first one's always a little rough. But this one, I decided I better do this one a month in advance. I've been writing the show or working on it all summer long. I've been finding stories, deciding what I want to tell and stuff. So it's kind of weird when you're in the middle of summer and suddenly a Christmas story comes to your head like, oh, I want to tell that one. Because I love Christmas, and I love thinking of Christmas, but I don't usually like thinking about Christmas till about the end of Remembrance Day this week. So, it's a little tough when you have to think of Christmas, make yourself think of Christmas stuff. So I've been putting together the show, and the first run-through, I thought, I better do this a month in advance instead of the week that I used to do it. And it was very rough. It scared me a lot. it excites me, and I've always told you I'm always excited and nervous when a show comes. But now, the rough version for me is basically you spew everything that you have, and then you realize, okay, that didn't work, this didn't work, and then you start trimming the fat. But I was rough on all accounts, and I said, this is good that I did this a month in advance, because now I can do several run-throughs, and I'll probably be doing even more than I normally do, just to get that comfort level on the stage. Now, as far as everything else from the show, coming together beautifully. I've got my tech rehearsals booked. I've got my little something I'm going to be doing before the show all ready to go. I've got lots of different things going on, the promotions out there. So yeah, everything else is going well. I got a couple of little things to work out, but nothing huge. So now it's just the show. So I've done a couple run-throughs now since the first one, still trimming the fat. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing the first really big one. This is the one where I've now decided what's staying, what's going, and that. So I will be doing the whole thing. So I really even don't have an idea of the length yet, but it's really great, and I love having this artistic side. I've talked about this many times. It's important to have an artistic side, whether it's painting or whether it's, it could be anything really. Painting, music, you do shows, you volunteer, even if you're painting, backgrounds for that. Everything in theater matters for a show. If you're selling tickets, volunteering time, selling tickets, that's huge. Just because it gets you out and about and stuff like that. I even consider stuff like role-playing creative sides coming out. If you do fantasy baseball or football leagues or hockey leagues, that's all creative side. I think more people need to do that, I think we spend too much time binge watching and stuff like that, and we need to spend more time doing other things. So it's been really fun putting the show together. It's scary as hell. Has it made me want to? No, because I'm billing this as my final monologue show. Now, in no way am I saying this is the end of my career. I'll still, if they still plan to do the Valentine's Day coming up, I'll definitely do that. And I don't know, maybe it's time to do some new projects. Maybe it's time to find new ways to get out there. But it is fun doing the Christmas monologues. I think it's going to be a fun show. It's going to have my same mix of humor and sentimentality, and I look forward to it. And I look forward to it. And as I said, one of the things I said, okay, Don, if this is going to be your final monologue show, you've got nothing planned for the future. Now, I still have my creative side. I consider Mondo Nostalgia creative. Even though all I do is find stuff from YouTube that I think people would like and put it on my site, I still consider that creative because I handle it like a job, and I do it every day, so there's always new content, new old content. And of course I've got my Damien and Devlin show that I absolutely love, and I'm doing everything I can to try to promote that and that. But I needed something kind of still, and so I decided it's time to bring the pirate radio show back. So yeah, there you go. And if you happen to be listening to this before Christmas, my Christmas monologue show, it's at the Staircase Theater, November 24th, 8 p.m. Tickets are $15, and get there early. You can contact me. You can go through my Facebook or even there and let me know if you want to reserve tickets, or you can reserve tickets for the Staircase Theater. Their number is 905-529-3000, and contact them and say, I would like some tickets for Devlin's Christmas monologues. And please do, because I've had a lot of family members canceling out on me, and I'm trying hard not to be bitter about that. But yeah, please, I need some friendly faces in there, people I want to see. And hey, if you're new to listening to this and you still come to my show, I look forward to meeting you. So now, as I said, my new format just basically talks about things, and we take a little bit of a break in between. So I decided I'm going to talk about toxic people. And toxic people are people that are always negative, and sometimes they do it in a fun, charming way, And sometimes they're just toxic. Now, I always worry that I'm becoming a toxic person because sometimes I go through phases and I start posting stuff on Facebook I shouldn't, that everything sounds negative or sad. And I know some people can't deal with that, but I don't think of myself as a toxic person because even when I talk about sad things or negative things here, I always try to find a positive spin to it. And usually when I'm negative online or anything, most people just say, no, we know you get over it and stuff like that. So, because I didn't feel I could talk about toxic people if people actually thought I might be toxic, but I don't think I am. I really don't. But the toxic people I'm talking about, and we all know them. I'm not just talking about toxic people that are toxic at work. But they are pretty bad too. You know, the ones that, you know, something new is happening. I may be guilty of this too. But, you know, something new is happening, like corporate, you know, the corporate bosses have decided we're changing things up a bit. And you try to go into it looking at it in a positive spirit. And then there's always that one person that starts riling up people by saying, oh, this is going to be the end. And sadly, for some, it does start with, oh. And you know, they start, you know, nitpicking and finding out the negative ways. And I know a lot of workplaces are going through a lot of this right now. And the reason why is because of the changes the government's making with the minimum wage. And there's so many changes, and corporations are actually looking at ways to make this work for everybody, and other corporations are looking for ways of how to like deal with it so they don't get affected too much by it. So, yeah, so there's a lot of that. And then the toxic people are the ones that kind of run with it. I like to stay positive, but there are moments, I won't lie, I get memos at work and I'm like, oh, this isn't good. This isn't good. And usually I'm not negative, like I go around, have you seen this? This isn't good. I usually kind of just talk to people to see where their heads are at. And then if I start noticing that everybody's feeling the way I am, I don't feel too toxic. I try to stay open-minded, I'd like to think. Anyhow, but so, you know, those toxic people are just, I just let their words run off me. You know, they don't usually, oh my God, did you see what management's doing now? There's a new memo there. It's going to screw everything up, you know, and I go, I don't want to hear that. You know, I have my own problems with work. I have my own loves of work, but I don't need that to add to my stress level. But the toxic people I want to really address, and we all know some of them, is that toxic couple, that toxic person in a couple. You know, a friend of ours that gets into a relationship and they're with a toxic person, but they don't see it because they're so in love. They're thinking too much with their heart. It's actually more their genital area. And I'm not going to say their, you know, cock or their, you know, pussy or anything like that, because I've found toxic people in different genders and stuff. So I'm not going to just say it's, you know, women, or I'm not going to just say it's just men, because it's not. But basically, the problem I have with these toxic people, and, you know, I think about this stuff before I bring this on the show, and I've come across it several times in my life. Now, in my cases, it mostly is women, but I know other situations where people told me that it's more the man. And what this toxic thing is that basically they're really negative people, but they hide it in like sarcasm, or they're being funny and stuff. And what happens is eventually that sarcasm disappears, and when the relationship breaks up, it turns really sour, and then that person finally sees who they are. Now, the problem I have with this is I'm not going to name names here, so anybody worried about, you know, oh my God, I'm calling out this couple. But I've got a couple of them, or I've had a couple through the years, and I deal with them, is that you spend time with somebody, a long bit of time with someone, and you start seeing so much positivity in them. You see them laugh a lot. You see them being optimistic. You see them being thing. And then what happens is you don't see them for a week or two, or maybe even longer. And they spend all that time with that toxic person. And then when you meet up with them, you're so excited to see them. And then all you get is the toxicness of the negativity starts showing up. And so that person that you had such a great time with is now been tainted because they've only been hanging around mostly with this negative person in their life. And then what you deal with is now suddenly you get a lot of sarcasm and you get like everything's negative and everything is, and this drives me crazy because, you know, I look forward to spending time with people and then I'm like, oh no, I haven't seen them in a while. They've only been with their toxic partner. And then, yeah, within the first time, and then you hope that you see them again sooner because you've managed to get them out of that again. Sometimes you can't get them out of it because you don't see them that often. And then you kind of get to the point where you just don't want to see them anymore because they've become so much their partner. And the worst part is when the partner and them break up. They start seeing all the stuff that their friends had already started seeing, but you can't say anything because once you do, you know they're going to stick up for their partner over you, and I don't want to lose friends over that. But I also don't want to hang around people that are always like picking up bad habits that they don't even know they're picking up. Now, I'd probably be the toxic one in my relationship because Mike, for anybody who knows my partner, he is so easy to get along with. He is so sweet. He's very, wants to make everybody happy. He's got a dark side, don't get me wrong. He's got very dark humor and there's times where he doesn't tolerate much. But I get to see most of that. Me, he's the one that has to kind of hold me together sometimes. But again, I don't consider myself a toxic person, as in, I actually catch myself when I'm being too negative and I realize, oh my God, I'm the negative person here. And I think if you are a little bit of that person, you actually know you're doing it. I think these toxic people don't really know they're doing it. I think that's just the way they're brought up. I think sarcasm has been the most overused form of jocularity that you could possibly have. I think it's absolutely horrific. I think that it is just people use it too often now. Sarcasm used to be something you just dropped in once in a blue moon. Some people, they are so proud of the fact that they're always sarcastic. And I can't handle that. I want some sincerity. Because sometimes sarcasm is sincere. And other times I think it's just a sad cry for help because you don't know how to deal with your situations and problems like a regular human being, so you fall too much. And I use sarcasm, sure I do. I just don't use it all the time. It's kind of like the word fuck. As a kid, I don't consider myself a comedian, but when I do a show, I feel that when you use too much of that word, I don't want to freak too many people out by using it that often, that I think it becomes desensitized a little bit. I think of a movie like Sausage Party. I never thought I'd be talking about Sausage Party. But anyhow, I really enjoyed that movie. But one of the problems I had with it was the swearing was so ridiculous that it actually took me out of the movie a bit because I was just like, I'm losing the story and stuff. And I think this would have been much better. It just seemed like every time they couldn't think of something, they just threw in the F word. Or the C word, or lots of other creative words. And so, yeah, I feel that, with sarcasm, it's the same of that. You use it all the time. And it actually starts making you look bad. And I think, there's more toxic people out there. And I bet you some of you are listening to this and now thinking about the couples in your life. And you're realizing, yeah, one of my good friends does seem to be negative until he hangs out with me for a couple of hours, and then I start seeing the real person again. So, I think toxic people is a big thing, and I think we need to talk about it, because I think that's one of the things that kills. I've been in a friendship that has been in a real toxic friendship, and this guy's partner is just absolutely sickeningly sweet to your face and like so two-faced, but blatantly cannot stand you behind closed doors. And what I hate about it is that the friendships pretty much come to an end, sadly. But I know one day that relationship is going to end. And when it does, I wish, first of all, I hope it doesn't, because you've risked so much relationships. Like, a lot of times toxic relationships end a lot of other friendships and stuff. And that's not a good thing, because when that relationship ends, they're like, oh, I need to talk to you and stuff. And I kind of like usually take them in, but I don't know, as I get older, I think I might be a little bit more bitter and saying, yeah, you threw me aside like yesterday's trash. Why should I listen to you? So if I make them jump through, hoops like a trained seal, so be it. But anyhow, toxic people, look out for them, because, you can't really say much about them, because if you do, you're going to be in trouble. If you don't, if you say something, that they're going to stick up for their partner, and if you don't say anything after, they're going to say, why didn't you tell me they were this bad? And it's because you wouldn't have believed me. So it's really a no-win situation. So analyze if you're in a toxic relationship, Do you find you're a lot more negative when you're at home? That you look forward to going out with the friends more often than not? Because you might be in a negative relationship and it might be washing off on you. Anyhow, that's all I really have to say about toxic friends. Toxic people. Yeah, the workplace ones. I never planned to get into that, but there is a lot of that. Maybe I am a toxic person. Maybe I'm a toxic person, but not full-time. Maybe I'm a part-time toxic person. Maybe toxic is just not too much for me. I don't know. Anyhow, sorry, having a bit of a drink, talking a lot. I'm excited that this is going to be back to a weekly show. I've had a couple people who said they'd like to come on the show, new people and a couple of old people that we always like having back here. And I'll hope to get one in a week or two, and we'll see. Maybe after my show, I'll work heavily on trying to get somebody over here to do a show. Yeah, I'd like that. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. So I've got other things I want to talk about, and they have totally slipped my mind. So this might be a very good time for a break. So why don't you get yourself a nice beverage or some snacks, and I'm going to re-put my thoughts together, and I will see you in just a few moments.
And now, before the next show starts, let's enjoy an intermission. You'll find our snack bar chock full of good things to eat and drink. Tasty, tempting hot dogs, thirst-quenching soft drinks, fresh, crunchy popcorn, a complete assortment of delicious candy, and a full line of cigarettes. You've plenty of time, so visit the snack bar now. A tasty treat will double your enjoyment of the show.
Now, the time is here. Now's the time for a bite of cheer. A tasty light where the price is right. Well, look at here, you'll dig this sight. The moment's handy for a piece of candy. Just name your brand, they're all so grand. Hey, what do you think of a nice cool drink? Or a big box filled with a popcorn thrill? Let your taste buds meet with an ice cream treat. Refresh yourselves, it's time to eat. So come on, folks, let's join the band as we all head for the refreshment stand.
Welcome back. Devlin's Pirate Radio Show in full swing. Back to the regular weekly show. Wouldn't it be great if I took a hiatus after this? I'm doing this because I want to get back to it. Why I chose doing this new format where I'm just not talking about like 20 minutes of a segment or something, I don't know. I just want it to be more off the cuff. Write down things that I've been thinking of, whether it's things. And I'll be talking about entertainment stuff and promoting stuff around Hamilton, because I like doing that. And sometimes I overhear things. And this next bit I want to talk about goes back to Halloween. And I wanted to talk about it because I really loved this conversation. So just the week before Halloween, I was in my work, Value Village, and people were talking, and I overheard two people talking about them having a Halloween party at a church. Now, it was a woman and her mother, and both women were both older ladies. And the woman said, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We're having a small get-together at the church for Halloween. And the older woman said, really, a Halloween party at church? I've never heard that before. And it says, why? It'll be a lot of fun. We'll bring some potluck and dress up a little bit and have fun. And the older lady was still like, I don't know, Halloween just doesn't seem like something you would celebrate at church. And then the younger lady made a comment that kind of slayed me because I didn't know we still thought this way, but I guess from a church point of view, it was kind of interesting. And what it was she made a comment and said that, oh, I totally agree with you. I think if there's limits, that's fine. But one lady said that she wanted to come dressed up as Frankenstein, and I put my foot down and said, no, we're not having that. And she said, I'm going to fight adamantly to make sure nobody dresses up as Frankenstein or zombies or anything like that. And I found it interesting because first, for a moment, like as I said, I was working. So I was thinking, why is Frankenstein so offensive? And then I realized, well, it's the church. And the church is all about, God and God creating things. And Frankenstein is about a man creating something. And I thought to myself, wow, that's still a thing? Like, and I'm not saying that shouldn't be a thing for the church. But what I'm saying is that Frankenstein I just consider now part of, like folklore, like Robin Hood or, Three Musketeers and, stuff like that. So I just think of it as a story based on a story, but I didn't realize that, yeah, the church would get up in arms about something like Frankenstein or possibly zombies or something. And it just kind of took me, because every once in a while I remind myself, I get into like this spiritual kind of way, and I get thinking, how life has gotten so much better. How everybody's open-minded now and stuff. And then then I hear something that reminds me that, no, we're still in the Dark Ages. Maybe not in the old Dark Ages, but we still have people that think that way. And I get it. And to be honest with you, if a church wants to ban stuff like that, by all means, they have every right to do it. But it just blew me away of the fact that there's still people. Like, to me, Frankenstein or Dracula would just be like, as I said, folklore. Just something fun, most of the times you see them, they're portrayed not even as scary anymore. They're kind of like fun or sexy or, but yeah, I couldn't believe it. And I just kind of wanted to share that because it's not like I'm offended, like that was their beliefs. And I guess their beliefs don't hurt anyone. Maybe I'm just a little shocked because I sometimes think the world's so forward, and then something kind of wakes me up to the fact that, yeah, we're not really as forward as I'd like to think. But hey, power to them and stuff. And I hope that lady who wanted to play Frankenstein at least got to like do it at another party somewhere, because, I don't think, she probably worked hard on that costume and stuff and really wanted to do it. So anyhow. Little things I want to share with you. I finally got to see Stranger Things. Now, before you start posting spoilers to me, I've only seen season 1. And I actually really liked it. I thought it was well cast. I thought it was absolutely well written. I love the 80s atmosphere. Like, they captured it particularly well. I love the 80s soundtrack, everything about it. Now, I don't think there was anything particularly groundbreaking in the show. I think every time I'd watch something, I'd say, oh, they got that from this, and they got that from Stephen King, they got that from another show. I've seen that many times. I don't think there was any originality in it whatsoever, but it was original because they put it together in their own show. But I'm not here to review Stranger Things, although I just kind of did because I definitely recommend it to people. I want to talk about the 80s bandwagon, and I don't hate anything that promotes the 80s. The 80s was my youth, and that's pretty much when I grew up. I would have been like 12 to 22 or something like that when the 80s happened. And that, of course, is a big part of your life, your teen years. And I have to say that I personally love that there's kind of an 80s resurgence. Now, a couple of years ago, everybody was embracing the 90s, and I always thought that the 90s were okay. But I want to sound, maybe because I always thought the 70s and the 80s, you know, and obviously like 50s, 60s, 40s, they all had their own kind of feel. But I felt after the 90s, there was sort of a little bit of a feel. But I think now everything's kind of getting generic. And it's hard to say, because even when the 90s came out, I said, does the 90s really have its own style? And then I looked and, okay, I'll give it. It had its own hit shows and its own hit music and stuff. But it seems like now everybody's embracing the 80s. I've heard like younger people at my work talking about how, oh, I wish I was brought up in that generation. And, you know, talking about the 80s. And I remember talking about that about the 50s and 60s, because I always thought, what a wild time to grow up. And now it's weird hearing people, you know, that are probably old enough to be my kids say, oh, God, the 80s, you were so lucky to be brought up in it. And, you know, it's great. I'm glad Stranger Things invented the 80s, because I've heard people that have talked bad about the 80s. They're now listening to 80s music and stuff, you know. They still might not like everything in the 80s, but, you know, I kind of joked with them. It's like, yeah, weren't you pushing down the 80s music and stuff? And now you're like putting it on Facebook, you're listening to it and stuff. I knew personally that the 80s was incredible because I was brought up in it. And I knew we had awesome entertainment and stuff like that. And yeah, and it was so weird to see like this 80s comeback revival. And so, yeah, and I'm glad it's on a good show like Stranger Things. There's nothing worse than getting a revival where you're like, oh, really? This is why you're reviving this again? But, yeah, it's great to see. And I like the fact that, you know, I'll be honest. When I used to go Halloween shopping, and, you know, you'd always see a 50s costume or a 60s or the 70s. I remember the day I walked in and I saw a section that was called the 80s. And I thought, that's not a costume. That's not an era. That's just a couple of weeks ago. And then I do the math and say, no, that was about 20 years ago. And now I can say it and say it's about 30 years ago. And so it's like nice to see this resurgence of it. But I did get spooked. I think I did a podcast a while back that talked about how I started listening to oldie stations and suddenly, you know, 80 songs started popping up into the oldies stations, and I was just like, no, this isn't happening. So it's weird, and it happened again with when the Halloween started coming out with 80s now, and this year I went to a Halloween store and they had a whole Stranger Things section. And I was just like, yep, this is the 80s. But you know what? Stranger Things, I have to say, does a great job. A lot of times when they spoof it, it's really over the top, but they are so subtle with it that it just feels like the 80s. Now, I was talking about a friend about the 80s and how it's nice to see younger people who want to go back there, because I don't think it's just about the fashion and the music. I think, like with Stranger Things, you see a I can't even say this word, camaraderie with the boys, where they're out playing Dungeons and Dragons, they're playing board games. You see them out on bikes, you see them actually sitting and talking about, you know, a lot of time they're talking about Stranger Things, but they are also talking about, you know, like girls and growing up. And I don't think the newer generation, the younger generation, the current generation has that anymore. I heard rumors that a lot of people, they don't know how to ask other friends to go to movies and stuff. That they basically, text everything, how are you doing? How's it going? And it's sad that we've lost that. And I'd like to think that not only is it the music and the fashions and everything that people like about Stranger Things, I'd like to think it was that feeling of togetherness. Because I know when I grew up, even in the 80s, we didn't have, we had computers, but they were nothing like now. Now everybody has a phone and is connected and stuff, and yet still we feel less connected in so many ways. But what I remember, even in the 80s, I remember as teens going to see the movie Stand By Me and thinking, God, I wish I had friendships like that. And then now I look back and I actually did have friendships like that. But I think nowadays a lot of kids are not having those friendships because we have technology, we have video games, we have technology, we have all this stuff that keeps us connected without being connected. We don't, they don't generally, I remember, hanging out with a early 20-year-old and asking him if he wanted to come over sometime and watch a movie. Now, I forget that I'm an old man now. I just think of it's two guys hanging out and stuff, but I noticed he was a little weird on me, and I was asking him, I said, I hope I didn't freak things out. It was not, I thought maybe it was because I'm a gay man, and he thought I was hitting on him. But he actually responded honestly and said, nobody's ever asked me. Not even people my age have asked me to come over and watch a movie, and it was just, I didn't know how to respond to it. So we cleared the air on the situation, but it was very, very saddening to me that so many people. And then I remembered somebody posted a meme and it said something like, that moment that you realize you have a lot in common with somebody, but you don't know how to ask them to hang out. And it saddened me so much. So I think Stranger Things shows that closeness to friends. Like, the first season, this isn't a spoiler, but one of the kids kind of goes missing. And the friends never give up on him. And one of the sad things I see now is we give up on friends so easily. In some cases, we give up on family so easily. So I'd like to think Stranger Things has a lot to do with, that camaraderie, I don't know, that friendship that we don't really see in the world anymore. So let's celebrate Stranger Things, and maybe we can find a way to bring the 80s friendships back and the music and all that, and still keep the technology. You'd think with the technology we could find ways to make it perfect. Anyhow, want to talk about this next subject, but I don't really know how, because I'm going to look like a dick either way, but hopefully my clever talking will make me look exactly how I see it in my head that I want to explain this. I'm going to talk to people who are just starting going to the gym. And first of all, I want to say that I commend you for going to the gym and wanting to make you better. Now, whether it's you want to lose weight, or whether it's you want to have a healthier body, whether it's you want better confidence in yourself, whatever the case is, I salute you. I give you some applause. That's me giving you applause. And I'll be honest with you, you lose weight and you look hot, I'm going to be the first one to stare at you. But I have to make this clear. Don't let it define you. Okay? I've had a lot of people join the gym, and I've noticed a couple times that sometimes they start getting this gym attitude. Like, I'm proud that you did this, but don't expect that everybody's going to follow you to do this. And if they do, hey, there's nothing wrong with that either. If you inspire someone, that's great. But do not start getting into that attitude where you start unintentionally putting people down because they don't go. little backhanded comments about, them being chubby or something. Or, once when you were like, oh, I see nothing wrong with your body, starts becoming, well, if you're concerned about that. And not everybody does this who goes to a gym, but I find a lot of times it does. I hope you went to the gym for yourself. I recently saw somebody going to the gym, and I could tell they were doing it because they wanted to look better to meet someone. And I feel their whole thing is that they hope to meet somebody. Nothing wrong with that. That's pretty much, regular human behavior. We want to look good for people. But don't let that define you. It takes more than a good-looking body to meet people. You actually have to put yourself out there. You have to actually go out and try different things. You actually have to go and put yourself on the line. You have to volunteer doing stuff. Go out to random things where there's people. And find other things. Don't make the gym your thing. The gym can be a big part of your thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But why don't you go to the gym and also, join a bowling league? Or why don't you write poetry and go to poetry slams or poetry readings? Or maybe, pick up an instrument and learn an instrument too. Don't let the gym define you, because the problem is that one day our bodies are going to fall apart. And, whether it's like a chubby guy like me who's just going to keep putting on weight, and then I probably won't, I'll need one of those scooters. Okay, I don't think that's ever going to happen to me. I'm going to fight it as much as I can. But I don't get it when that's suddenly all they can talk about is the gym, the gym, the gym. I'm proud. And as I said, I am so proud of you, and you have every right to talk about that. Just don't let it be the only thing you talk about, because one day your body is going to betray you. You can keep it as healthy as you want. That's not going to stop you from getting, I can't think of the word, arthritis or cancer or anything like that. Yes, healthy living is certainly going to help in the long run. I don't want to be dissing that in any way. And I totally pat people on the back. I wish I could go to the gym. I had an opportunity to go to a gym. Somebody wanted me to join the gym so we could hang out, but I had my reasons why I can't use that as a thing. As much as I want to spend as much time as I can with this person, there's a personal reason I can't do it. I can't afford going to a gym, even though I think I'd actually love it. I'd love putting on my headphones and, I'd love to lose weight. Just even talking about it makes me kind of want to look into going to a gym, but I know I financially can't afford it. And people would say, you physically can't afford it, that you should put the money to it and stuff. And that's gym mentality thinking. And that's okay, but I'm just saying that don't let it define you. Because one day you are going to have love handles, or one day you're going to be, hey, maybe you'll be 80 and you'll have really tight abs until then, and that's great. But if you have nothing to talk about and you're just sitting there with the partner that you got, you're going to start noticing every pound that they gain. But you won't have anything to talk about. So if you're going to do a gym, that's great, but just watch what you say and start, because I found some gym people can be downright insulting at times. And so, go join a gym, but at the same time, go out and call some people, go check out a movie, go have some sushi or whatever. But just don't let it define you. It can be a big part of your life. That's okay, but there's got to be more to it. Don't expect that the gym is just going. And to be honest with you, this is my last epiphany before people still think you're anti-gym. And I go, no, I'm not. Here's the thing. If you go and lose all the weight, and you have great muscles and great abs, right? And then you meet somebody that wouldn't have been attracted to you, getting to know you, but all they see is the muscles and abs. Do you really think this is a positive relationship? Yeah, I'm attracted to guys I always say I'd love to have a six-pack, but I don't necessarily want it on me, you know. But think about it. If these people only invested interest in you after you got these muscles and abs, do they really want the real you? What was wrong with the doughy guy that, you had the same interests in and stuff like that? If they're not attracted to you like that, you're going to have to stay perfect because that's who they fell in love with. They didn't fall in love with that person. So why don't you do yourself a favor and get the abs and the muscles, but you have your interests and stuff. So keep that in mind too. So anyhow, enough of that. Not putting down people going to the gym. I'm just saying don't be a gym rat at all that they talk about. There you go. My final thing I want to talk about is Remembrance Day. I had a wonderful opportunity to go up to the Canada Warplane Museum here in Hamilton. I've talked about it in my podcast, and I strongly recommend you check it out. And if you get a chance to see one of their Remembrance Days, I absolutely recommend it. I went with my good friend, Damien Troutman, and he's a big supporter of Remembrance Day, and he also had some time in the service. We went, and we had an absolute wonderful time. It was very emotional, but it was wonderful to see the turnout. This Remembrance Day was on a Saturday, and they were even joking. They didn't know if they'd get more people because it was a Saturday or less people. And they wound up having more. They had set up 2,500 chairs, and there was standing room only. Just wonderful to see. They did a ceremony that was about just over an hour and a half, and it was very awesome. They did everything from, they started with, a couple of introductions and stuff. They had the chapel of the Warplane Museum talk a little bit and do some prayers. Then they did the 2-minute silence. Now, for me, the 2-minute silence is tough because I do think of the people who had fallen. I also think of the people who still serve. But I also tend to think of my mom and dad, and I did have a bit of a breakdown. But it's okay. I let myself just cry and that. And, then they play, the last post just before, and then they play another little trumpet thing. And I remember this year I was just breaking down, and I warned Damien, I'm very sensitive around this, and he said, yeah, I understand. And he had lost a friend this year who was also served with him. And I remember just breaking down with my eyes closed, thinking of this, and then he just put his hand on my shoulder and just made me feel safe, and everything's all right, and he just held me for a bit, and that's one of the reasons that made the ceremony so great, was because I didn't feel alone there. But then they had people come up and talk about their experience, and then they had people stand, which was incredible, from people from World War II and Korea. Then they had people stand from Afghanistan and other things, and people who were just in the service or had been in the service. And it was just so amazing to see them stand, and you could actually applaud them. And then they had a person who talked about Vimy. He's a writer who researches this. And, I've been to Remembrance Days in my high school that are just, I don't want to say they're boring, but they're boring. But this guy was so enthusiastic, and you could tell he did a lot of research on it, that it was really interesting, the historical facts he had. And, I could see why they want to work with this guy more to come out and talk, because he was just incredible. It was nice to see the ages of the people. There were people young, old that were there, and a lot of the younger people didn't seem like they were forced. It's nice to see, they say millennials are actually very interested in Remembrance Day. And it's nice to see that because of the fact that, I always worried that as people get older, are we going to even have Remembrance Day? But I have a feeling it's definitely going to be something that's around. Because, come on, honestly, war and service is going to be around forever. You know, I don't want to put a bummer on this about world peace, but I really don't think we'll ever see a day of war peace. I think even if we got peace, somebody will always want war. And sadly, we live in a time where we're always being worried about, you know, Trump or, you know, North Korea pushing the button. And so I think Remembrance Day is even more thing. In fact, it blows me away. The one thing I liked about the guy who talked about Vimy was that he talked about, when I tell these stories, don't think of the old veterans that you see now. And he wasn't being disrespectful at all. He said, think that these people were like 15, 16, 17. Now, I'm not trying to diss people that age, but think of the people you know in that age group. A lot of them can't deal with regular life. And these young men and women who now go fight out in the war are basically, they were there. And they were the ones who had to make the decisions. They were the ones who lost their lives. They were the ones that came back with wounds and memories that they'll haunt them forever. And quite frankly, it is just mesmerizing to think that if we actually had another war, it frightens me to think that we wouldn't have a lot of people who would be able to handle that mindset. You know, I know a lot of amazingly young people, and I know a lot that are amazing, but they can barely deal with a job. Like, they can't even do basic job things they're told and stuff. And it scares me to think we have. And it makes me think of Stranger Things again, because maybe the reason millennials like Remembrance Day so much is because these are literal heroes, and they can't imagine themselves being heroes. I think millennials want to think that, and please continue to think this way, is that one day they might be able to figure out solutions for war and environmental problems and stuff. And God bless you if you do. And even if you consider just finding a thing, I think some problems just can't be solved. I think there's many that can be. But I think they don't realize that, well, we can't really be warriors like these people are, but we could probably find ways around it. Maybe we can make the world a better place and stuff like that. And find, cures for diseases or things to deal with the environmental problems and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It scares me that I don't think we could have soldiers. And I'm not saying that there aren't. I'm sure there's lots of wonderful men and women out there who are in the service that would just sacrifice like they did in the past. But I don't think it's as common. I think back then there was a real loyalty to your country. And I now think a lot of people, that loyalty is just words. I don't think it would fall back on actions. But anyhow, if you do get a chance to get up to Remembrance Day up at the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum, definitely check it out. And if you can't, there's so many other ones. Check your listings. I've talked about Remembrance Day before on here, and I will continue talking about it when I am. But go check out one every year. And if you have kids, don't force them to go, but try to convince them why it's important to go. Anyhow, I think I'm done talking about everything I got here on my list, and I had an amazing time. I'm glad I'm going to be trying to do this again. I hope you like the new format where I'm just kind of pull things out here and there. I think I like it a lot. I feel like I'm actually really talking as myself. Hope I get those 17 people back, maybe 17 more. If you could share this or click or let people know, hey, have you heard this podcast yet? I would really appreciate that. And I will be back next week. You heard it right here. We're weekly again. And I'm not even going to tell Corda. She's going to find out when she actually edits this. I'm going to tell her that. So she'll just think this is like, oh, I said I'm going to do it every couple of weeks or something. But nope, weekly again. So I will see you next time at this very, well, not the same time because it's a podcast. Depends when you look at it. I'll see you next week. And I look forward to talking to you very soon.